I'm from the African Hebrew Israelite community in Dimona. It's the largest community of African Americans, the largest concentration of African Americans outside of America and any place else in the world. The largest community of vegans in the world. One of the only self-sufficient, fully self-sufficient communities of African descent in the world. And we're a community that identify with the biblical roots of the Israelites.
This is a Visegrad 24 series about the Israel-Hamas war.
Welcome back to another episode of the Visegrad 24 podcast series here in Tel Aviv, Israel. We have a really cool guest right now, a guy named Ashriel. He's an influencer, so a public intellectual. I met him on the street when we were doing street interviews, and we just started chatting, and I said, this is not a street interview, this is a sit down, because this dude has some really interesting perspectives. As you know, he looks a little different than some of, the Zohan when you think of, the Israeli stereotypes. And so, dude, welcome. Good to have you, bro.
Thank you, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to be out here and, to speak to you. A lot of people have a misconceived notion in regards to what's taking place in Israel. And it's almost impossible for you to be able to understand what's taking place in Israel, honestly, if you don't live here or if you haven't had the opportunity to really familiarize yourself with the very complex reality of Israel, the vast amount of people who are here from different groupings. Did you know that in Israel you have approximately 102 different nationalities?
I know that.
Almost all of the world's religions are represented in Israel. Did you know that you have about 5 different groupings of Arabs who are all categorized as different? You have Druze, you have Arab Israelis, you have Arab Palestinians, Afro-Palestinians. Then you have Bedouins, and then you have those who consider themselves Palestinians. So when you speak about the Arabs in Israel or the Palestinians, you have to be very clear about who it is that you're speaking about. When you speak about Israel or Israelis, you have Ethiopian Israelis, you have Iraqi Israelis, you have Hebrew Israelites, you have African-American Jews, you have Russian Jews. So it's very, very vast. But you couldn't understand Moroccan, Tunisian, Persian, from so many different places or whatever. So if you didn't live here, or if you didn't get a proper, in-depth understanding of the realities on the grounds, then it's nearly impossible for you to be able to understand. And it's definitely not a binary situation. Only when you understand the complexities can you be able to then analyze a situation from a more understanding perspective, as opposed to just choosing a side based on your emotional refreshment or your emotional connection to whatever side of the story that you're hearing based on 15 seconds on TikTok.
We're talking about culture. We're talking about ethnicity. This is like the practice of this conversation. So what's yours?
So I'm what will be defined as an African Hebrew Israelite from the African Hebrew Israelite community in Dimona, which, by the way, is the largest community of African Americans, the largest concentration of African Americans outside of America and any place else in the world. The largest community of vegans in the world. One of the only self-sufficient, fully self-sufficient communities of African descent in the world. And we're a community that identify with the biblical roots of the Israelites, right? So we term ourselves African Hebrew Israelites because we trace our roots back to Abraham, who was a Hebrew, back to Jacob, who was an Israelite, and we identify as children of the tribe of Judah, so in such we will be considered then Jews or Judeans. And so this community has been in Israel since 1968. We initially came because of our understanding that we wanted to reconnect to our roots here in Israel once again. After being in America for 400 years, obviously you know that we were taken into America to be enslaved against our will from the west coast of Africa. But most people don't even know that a lot of those Israelites who arrived to the west coast of Africa came from Israel, actually. And there were people who actually left Israel all the way back in 721 BC with the invasion of the Assyrians to Israel. There were people who left Israel in 586 BC with the invasion of the Babylonians, right, to Israel, and the destruction of the first temple. And then those people who also left in 70 AD with the Roman invasion, destruction of the second temple. There were periods of time that people of Israelite tradition and culture and heritage actually left Israel and went to North Africa, and then from North Africa migrated to West Africa, and they were taken from there beginning in 1448 into America to be enslaved. So we returned back to our original homeland, right? Our ancestral homeland. But most people wouldn't even know that. So when you look at us being here in Israel, you would probably think that we are part of a colonizing power who have taken someone else's native land and who's residing on someone else's native land. But if you didn't know that history, then you would know so. But also from the other end, if you didn't know the history of the Arabs in this region, in this area, then you also wouldn't understand that all the way back in the 7th century, right? There was an Arab invasion to Israel, right? You wouldn't understand also that there was an invasion of Mamluks who also identified as Arabs or also Arab Muslims. And then also the Ottomans, right, who invaded the land, who were here for approximately 400, 500 years and all the way up until the First World War. So all of these things, you wouldn't be able to actually get a full picture and understand it in its entirety unless you really understand the history of this place. And obviously everybody, and this is the very unfortunate part of it all, Matt, that people will actually take a small portion of a very complex reality and they would magnify that as if that's the end all be all. Yeah. And then have everybody focusing on something very specific within thousands of years of history and have you believe that what you're focusing on, that is all, that is it, and there's nothing else to be focused on. And so my community is actually a representation of the fact that it's a little more complex than what you actually think it is, and we represent that. So we have approximately 3,000 people in Israel in the city called Dimona, in a neighborhood called the Village of Peace. And in this village, over the last 50 years, we've hosted big time names like Whitney Houston, like Bobby Brown and Winnie Mandela and Stevie Wonder and Amari Stoudemire and Blair Underwood. I mean, all of these people came to see the community, to understand what is it that we managed to build in Israel throughout this 50-year period of time. And also in 1994, a group of doctors came to Israel to understand if the vegan diet that we have been conducting since the 1970s have any effect on our bodies, our livelihood, longevity. And this is something interesting, Matt. They found that of the 10 chronic diseases that people of African descent in America and other places in the world suffer from, almost none of those are found in our community just by virtue of the lifestyle that we conduct, in addition to the diet as a full vegan diet. So it's healthy for your body, and it also is not harming to the environment. And so those are two things that we have worked very hard to manage, that we want to ensure that our bodies are receiving the nutrients that the body deserves and needs, but that is not harming the environment, is not killing animals for our personal desires, and that is not causing us to suffer from unnecessary diseases that we wouldn't have to suffer from had we not conducted the type of diet that we conduct today.
Very, very cool. And I mean, you look super healthy. You seem super energetic. So your family has background in the U.S., you said Chicago.
In Chicago.
Right? Yeah. Which is also a center of a lot of different African-American movements that go in different directions. You have, Louis Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, the Hebrew Israelites have a presence there. So what prompted you to come here? What prompted your family? What were some of the catalysts, going back, say, the last few decades?
Throughout the 400 years of enslavement of people of African descent in America, approximately 30% of the people who were taken from the west coast of Africa to be enslaved in America were people of Israelite tribes, right? And they maintain, that connection to their identity as Israelites. So of course, beginning in 1600s, they weren't allowed to continue to maintain those Israelite traditions, clearly because the slave master wanted to create a new person, right? And so what they did was they stripped us of our history, our culture, our traditions. They didn't allow us to continue to read the Bible as we know. They didn't allow us to continue to do all the other things that would connect us to our Hebraic identity. And so they created then Christians, right? Yeah. But the majority of us weren't Christians.
Baptist, Southern Methodist.
But then we continued to sing about over the River Jordan. about Canaan's land, right? Even if you go back to those songs from that period of time, the soul songs, right? The connection,
Oh, sweet chariot.
coming
Yeah.
forward to carry me home, which means that they were very, very much
They
aware
mentioned
of
the River
fact,
Jordan a lot.
because they knew where they came from,
Yeah.
right? It was deeply embedded in their identity. And so only once we had the ability once again to outwardly conduct or outwardly once again reconnect to our cultural identity as Israelites, did we realize then that we were brought into America against our will to be enslaved? Did we realize that we were actually sold by tribes in Africa to the Europeans and then taken from there to America? And
Caribbean.
And to the
And a lot of
Caribbean
people
and
stayed
South
in the
America as
Caribbean,
well.
like in Jamaica, where there's a huge culture of reggae, which is so focused on the Ethiopian roots. And you listen to if you listen to lyrics of Bob Marley, there's a lot of reference to Judah and the Judean tribe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of Ethiopians here now.
Because that's part of our identity. And so in the 1960s, it was a period of great awakening in America. So you had those people who were talking about, any place is better than here, like Malcolm X, and you had Martin Luther King that was asking to be integrated into the Society of America.
Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey in the 1920s when he was talking about a Back to Africa movement. You had all of these people who were actually understanding that America is not the place for us, and definitely not Christianity, right? And then when we went into the books, into the Bible, and we understood our heritage, our history, then we said that, why shouldn't we go back home then, right? A state has been established here in Israel that allowed us once again to turn our eyes back to Israel as a real, live, geographical location for African Americans, because prior to the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948, Israel didn't actually exist as a real, live, physical place for it. And so our people once again realized that it was time to go back home. Yeah. And so that movement began in 1967 when we left America and we went through Liberia to the west coast of Africa.
Liberia.
We went through Liberia.
Interesting, because that's where that was started as Liberia, Liberty. That was a place carved out specifically by, I think, James Monroe. The capital was Monrovia, and so they were literally saying, okay, well, maybe there's an alternative to the southern slaveholding and an option to bring Africans back. And I think that predated Marcus Garvey by a century and a half.
That was in the 1800s, right? They established that to be an outpost for African Americans who wanted to return back to Africa. And so we spent approximately 2 years in Liberia, and then we made our aliyah to Israel, understanding that it was time for us once again to return back to our ancestral homeland. And we've been here ever since, and we've embedded ourselves into the culture of Israel.
It's all around. People don't know it, but you and I have talked about it offline. Like, my biggest shock coming here is the full racial complexion of all of humanity is here. From dark black African to Ethiopian, which is some sort of more modulated pigmentation, to Arab Israeli and Jewish Israeli that looks Mediterranean Arab, to bright white Ashkenazi from the cold lands of Russia with red hair and long payas. I mean, it's like the gamut. You see it in the IDF, which is really interesting, and you see these people get along so well. They're working together. And I always joke, in a foxhole, it's an old saying, in a foxhole, you don't see race. When there are bullets whizzing by and you're shoulder to shoulder, there's something, that we talked about in the American Civil Rights Movement. World War II did a lot for the Civil Rights Movement because blacks were integrated into the troops, into the platoons, the battalions, and in a foxhole, y'all brothers. Everyone's a brother because you have a common enemy. And then the Vietnam War accelerated that as well.
You realize in a situation like that color, race really has no place in a society that is actually looking to build its foundation on principles like love, like justice, like the Bible, obviously. And so in a place like Israel, yes, there are many challenges, and we're very vocal about those challenges, right? We speak about the fact that there is discrimination. We speak about the fact that there is racism. We speak about the fact that there are a lot of things that need to be changed in the society to make it a better society and more inclusive, to allow us all to be, because Israel is probably one of the only places that people don't just immigrate to looking for a better life. Yeah. Most people who come to Israel, they come because I can't define for everybody, right? But at least for us, because there was a deep yearning for our return back to that ancestral homeland that we loved so much. And so we came here from lives of lavishness in America, right?
And scattered.
And scattered.
But the Bible Old Testament says that my people are scattered.
Scattered, and we're gonna once again that ingathering, returning back to our ancestral homeland. And so, majority of people who you see in Israel, these are people who really have an affinity to the land, to the Bible, and desire to live in accordance with that. Does the society actually reflect that at this moment? No. Should it reflect that? Absolutely. But is it getting better? Well, it's getting better in certain areas, and it's not getting better in other areas. However, that definitely will not determine for us if we would support an organization who is an organization that is clearly looking to obliterate us all. Like Hamas, for example, right? Because there have been a lot of people who are suggesting that we should support Hamas because of the oppression of the Palestinian people, and as such, because we experience oppression worldwide, then we should be able to identify with that oppression that they experience. Now, two things about that. Yeah. Number one, we certainly do identify with the oppression of all people worldwide, because we understand what that means, right? Because we experience that. So when we look at the Palestinian people, obviously we want to see them have a better life. We want to make sure that they have a more respectable life, that they receive the type of rights that they deserve, that their dignity is once again upheld. But also we have to recognize that there are organizations like Hamas who have hijacked a just and a real pain and cause of a people who are actually suffering, and they've then injected their ideology into that, and they're now navigating the people to somewhere that has nothing to do with a freedom fight. Because when you look at Hamas and you say, for example, okay, just a few things, let's compare, okay? Hamas, according to their charter, they say that they're an organization that is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. In the Arab world, almost the Muslim Brotherhood is not an acceptable or respectable organization. They were kicked out of Egypt or overturned in Egypt because of their ideology.
Promoting radical Islam and theocratic takeover of the institutions and spreading jihad all through the region.
So there you have it. Then you have Hamas, who says that there is no way in the world to conduct any type of real negotiation with Israel. Jihad is the only way. But then you have the Palestinian people who say 72%, according to the Arab Barometer, which is a well-respected polling organization in the Arab world, that says that they would like to see a solution with Israel. Now, you also have the Palestinian people who are suffering in Gaza, and 62% of them said that it's because of the internal workings and the misappropriation of funds by Hamas. What does that mean in actuality? When you receive billions of dollars in aid, every year for the last 20 years, where have those funds gone?
Tunnels.
To tunnels, to missiles, to the pockets of the leaders who are billionaires. And they don't even live in Gaza. Yeah. They live in Qatar. But the people in Gaza are actually suffering. So I'm trying to figure out, there's no connection between the leadership in Hamas to the actual people who are suffering, really. And when we look at what's taking place in Gaza, it's a tragedy. To see the lives of human beings being taken, it's a tragedy. To look at the destruction in Gaza, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's also a tragedy to look at what took place on October 7th. To see the people butchered, to innocent people indiscriminately. Now, you can't say that that is a natural response to oppression, to target innocent human beings in their homes.
Civilians, women, children.
Innocent people. Yeah. Now, you had Europeans, people of African descent, you had Asians, you had Israeli citizens, you had foreign citizens. All of these people were a target of Hamas on October 7th. And not only just October 7th.
Filipino guests.
Thai Filipino, and not just October 7th. Even if you go back to the times of the first and the second Intifada, right? Where you indiscriminately blowing up buses and explosions in the middle. And as a matter of fact, let me tell you a secret that people didn't even know. that a member of my community, African Hebrew Israelites, was killed in a Hamas attack in 2002 while he was performing at a bat mitzvah in Hadera. They came in, they sprayed, and 6 people were killed, and he was one of those. So you're not going to try and convince me that we are not just as much a target for Hamas as anybody else.
It's what they say, right? They're killing colonial oppressors. It's justified. The jihad is justified. In London, one of their spokesmen, jihadist sort of intellectuals in a rally said, "We need more massacres. We want more massacres. They're not going to stop." But of who? Of colonial oppressors. You guys are colonial oppressors.
No way. It's no way. But then you would have people who would say, for example, that we are residing on someone else's stolen land, someone else's stolen territory, right? We're part of a colonial power who took someone else's land, and we're currently residing on it. And as a result of that, and as a matter of fact, it was funny because I had a conversation with somebody on Instagram, and he had said that people of African descent who reside in Israel should be ashamed of themselves because we're effectively supporting a colonial project just by virtue of us residing here in Israel, and we should pack up our bags and leave and go back to Africa where we came from. So I asked the guy, I said, okay, so where are you from? He said, I'm from America. I said, okay, and are you native to America? He said, yes. I said, how? He said, because on my father's side, my great ancestors, they were part of the Pilgrims.
So they moved in.
I said, and he said they established America when there were nobody and nothing there. I said, hold on though. But history shows that 90% of the Native Americans were actually killed off by war, smallpox, and other diseases, and the rest of them were put in reservations while you came in and took over their land, and then you declared independence from the British, and you said in 1776 that we have now established ourselves as the Great America. But what about the people who are actually native to that place? You're not even considering them. Not to even speak about the entire North Africa that has been colonized by an imperialist ideology or an imperialist power like the Arab imperialists who have absolutely, and they've made that part of the Arab world. How did North Africa, with all of these countries, these peoples with very rich cultures and traditions and history, just become part of the Arab world? How did that happen? How is that even possible? Conquest. And so how did Israel also become part of the Arab world? Conquest. So, now whether you look at it from the perspective of who was here on the land throughout the generations. So you have the Romans who had taken it over from the Israelite tribes, right? The Judeans. Then after the Romans, you had the Arab conquerors that came in the 7th century. Then after them, you had all the others who came in. And then later on, also for about 400 years period of time, you had also the Ottomans. And everybody who actually gained control over the land, they gained it by wars and by conquest. Nobody actually willingly gave it up. And so if that is the result of war, which is very unfortunate, then you can't say that nobody took your land by force, because that's how this land has been turning over for the last 2,000 years. Only the difference now is that there are people who really have a stake in the land and desire to be here because they have a deep affinity for the place. They're not just looking for this to be another outpost of a different country. Yeah. So that's the main difference between the majority of the people who are here now and the people who are controlling the land before.
A homeland versus a conquer. Yeah, outpost is a good word. A facet of the conquest, an imperial conquest, which is spread from the Arabian Peninsula and the Mideast through, like you said, North Africa. Let's shift gears for a sec, because as we sort of wind down for time purposes, I want to ask you, you've been very vocal in your social media videos, which are totally viral. I actually looked at some Israeli influencers that we were going to talk to, and they're sharing your stuff, which is great. about some of the AstroTurf protest movements. Obviously, we've talked ad nauseum, you and me, all of us in this podcast series, about the protest movements in London and New York and Chicago and et cetera, and the students and the indoctrination and the misallocation of facts that is going on through coercion of narratives. And that's what we're here fighting, is trying to get the truth out. But you've been pretty vocal about some of the other AstroTurf protest movements like BLM. And so I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on, what's going on in the West with some of these protest movements, even, with Israel or Israel aside.
Because people are very much uninformed, then it's very easy for them to create their position based on misinformation, disinformation, or the total alienation of facts. And when you look at it from a very binary perspective, then you miss the nuance in this, because it's very, very nuanced. It definitely is not one side or the other. And so when you have people who say that they support Hamas, and then they effectively say that they support the Palestinian people as a result of that, that's not true, because those are two different factions, and you wouldn't know that if you didn't live here. If you say, like, an organization like Black Lives Matter that says that they are in support of people who are experiencing oppression, and I can understand that, because but also you have in Gaza about 1% of the population who are experiencing oppression, who are African people of African descent, who are experiencing oppression there. Also in the West Bank. So I mean, you have to be very consistent about the message that you're giving. And unfortunately, people are just out and speaking about something that they have no idea about. And when you ask them about it, for example, you ask them from the river to the sea, what does that actually mean? That means that, Palestine should be freed or whatever. But which river and which, and which?
Noah Tishby did a video at Sundance, but they're all doing these videos on the protest streets of London and New York, and they don't know. Somebody said the Black Sea, which is like northern.
The Black Sea. I mean, and you ask these questions, but then I say that if what happened, for example, on October 7th, is a natural response to oppression, and people of African descent in America were brought, first of all, they were stolen from their lands, and then their lands were stolen from them. And
they have the Bob Marley lyrics for them. I had stolen from Africa.
Stolen from Africa. Brought to America. Driven from the mainland to the heart of the Caribbean, right? Then would it then be acceptable by any measure and to anybody that these people then start tomorrow going door to door, house to house, murdering anybody who's in sight, because they've been oppressed for 400 years?
Yeah. Well, we talked about this upstairs before we came down for to film. My view is, a ton of Black friends. I grew up in Brooklyn. I lived in Chicago in the South Side. No matter what the dissidents and just complaints about the social structure in the U.S., Black Americans view themselves as Americans. And the Palestinian Arabs here do not certainly view themselves as Israelis. They don't believe Israel has a right to exist. African Americans certainly do believe America has a right to exist. They're a part of it. They're an essential part of the fabric of America. So that is a big difference, and that's why you would never see, even with the crime and the problems that exist in the inner city, you would never see this sort of armed revolution to destroy everybody around them the way you have here on October 7th.
But just imagine in your mind for a moment, Matt, right, that, okay, let's go place to place. We'll start in North America. Obviously, North America was conquered from the indigenous peoples in America. And people are residing there and talking about the fact that Israel should be returned back to their indigenous people. We need to start in America. But we will continue from America. Let's go to North Africa, right? There are people in Morocco and in Algeria and in Egypt and that are screaming also the same things. Well, all those lands are also conquered by the Arab imperialists. Let's not stop there. Let's continue on down to South Africa, right? South Africa, Dutch, right? How did people of Dutch identity arrive there, right? Through the Dutch West Indian Company, right? And they arrived there. So I'm saying in all of these places, Let's not even talk about all of the places in Lebanon and Syria. And I mean, all these people also have their own indigenous peoples to those lands, and they were conquered. And so
Berbers and Kurds seem to have, no homeland of their own.
they don't have a homeland. Let's go down to Australia, right? I mean, let's go over to New Zealand. So, I mean, everywhere you look in the world right now, really, if you've been honest with yourself, then you would be able to say that the majority of these places are actually colonial outposts of whoever. The question is then, if you're actually calling for a new world order, in that sort, then it can't just begin and end in Israel. It has to then go all around the world. And so let's begin protesting also that everybody should leave America. Yeah. And everybody should leave South Africa, and everybody should leave North Africa, and everybody should leave, all of the other Asian countries, and leave Australia and leave New Zealand. But it's hypocrisy, because they're not going to speak about that. Right? Everybody is you've been there for years and you live there. But one thing, and I'm going to end with this here, one thing that is different here in Israel is that we as the next generation realize that everything that we actually have right now, these wars, we inherited this. We didn't ask for it. We didn't create it. We definitely don't want it. But we believe that it's our responsibility to end it. And so we, as the next generation of thinkers and leaders who understand that we're going to have to coexist here together, all in one, we're working together very hard. Palestinians, Israelis, blacks, Europeans, and a lot of other people understanding that we don't have any other place to go. I was born and raised in Israel, and I don't intend to go anyplace else. And I'm going to obviously bring children here. But I can't bring it into such an environment that is not secure. So we have to work together in order to ensure security, in order to ensure that we're able to live in harmony together, and in order to ensure peace. That's the only way that we're going to be able to see a better reality. Unfortunately, all of the leaders beforehand, they failed us. And so it's our responsibility as those who are charting the path forward. Either we're going to continue on down the same path, or we're going to all come together, realize that we have a better destiny that we should fulfill, and we'll work together in order to fulfill that.
Really interesting conversation, interesting perspective, tons of cultural knowledge you got to drop that people don't know in the U.S., in Western Europe. We're doing these English language deep discussions so that we can shift the narrative from things that are been created in this binary, non-multifaceted context, because it is multifaceted, and you are helping do that, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.